Hey friends, it's Simon Hurley and welcome to another video. Now there's been a new tool on the block that I've been using a ton, but it's been out of stock for a while and kind of hard to get your hands on. Today it's back in stock and we're going to be talking all about the Brutus Monroe stick and stamp mat and some of my favorite uses for it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, let me start off by showing my two stick and stamp mats that I've been using for a couple weeks now, and I think the really cool part about this is of course they're quite dirty, but they still got a lot of grip and stick left to them, so I still use these quite often. I just wanted to share a new one in today's video. Alright, I've got a nice and fresh mat here, and you're just going to pull off the acetate sheet, and this has got lots of stick on it, but it's not going to ever rip your cardstock, which is great. I love that it's got these guides in the center for your A2 size card, whichever way you want to put it, and it fits inside of your MISTI stamping tool. So it'll fit perfectly in here, and it's going to hold anything down, and we'll get into that technique in just a little bit as well. Alright, so I'm going to place my piece of stark white cardstock right in the center, and I literally love these guidelines. It makes it so easy to just line it up in the center, and then we can start our work. Now I love using stencils with this. This happens to be the flip-flap Chevron stencil. I'm going to pull it out, and the awesome part about this is you don't need any sprays or anything like that to make this stick, and no more tape either. All you need to do is just place your stencil down, and then on either side here where it's got that little bit of tack, you just kind of stick it into place and you're ready to do your stenciling. When it comes to ink blending, I'm just going to use a little bit of my Simon Hurley Create ink. This happens to be Shooting Star. And we'll go in with a blending brush to blend it down. And you guys can see this is super easy to do and just apply ink like normal, but I love that there's no tape necessary to hold it in place. And you guys can see also, I'm getting ink over the edge onto the mat, and we'll talk about that in just a second and how to keep your mat in pristine condition. Alright, so after this layer is done, we can lift off our stencil and we've got that really beautifully stenciled background. And with this stencil, I love it because it actually flips and we can shift it so that there creates a chevron pattern in two different colors. It's a really awesome stencil. And then all I have to do again is just place it down into that adhesive to make sure that it sticks. I love how simple that is with a two-step stencil like this. I don't want to have to be kind of messing with tape and everything like that, and so this makes it really super easy for me. And again, you can see we're blending our ink on, we're getting some ink down onto the mat, and it's no problem. Alright, so I'm just fully blending my prom queen all over the background with my blending brushes to get this great result. And once this is complete, we can then go in and peel that off. And you can see this beautiful two-tone background. Now once I'm done using the mat and I want to pull off my project, especially when it's first super sticky, you want to kind of bend your mat like this. It's going to easily peel off, and then you have your mat and your project isn't bent whatsoever. I'm going to set this off to the side, and now let's talk about cleaning off our mat, because you have to be pretty particular when it comes to cleaning. My best method is just using regular water, spraying it down onto the surface to clean my mat. And I also found that a paper towel works really well, but you just want any sort of cloth that's kind of lint-free. Alright, now when we go in here, you don't want to scrub and you don't want to apply a lot of pressure onto the surface. I literally just really lightly brush over the surface to remove any of the excess ink or water or debris from the surface. And you guys can see I'm not rubbing, I'm not introducing a lot of friction because you don't want to rub the adhesive off the mat. I don't want this video to turn into an ad for my ink pads, but my inks are really great at doing all different sorts of techniques, but they also don't stain. They clean off really easily, and that's one thing I love about working with them. So for this mat, I can easily clean off my inks from the surface and not have to scrub and ruin the mat with it. If an ink does stain though, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, this is a tool, and you're not sending it to anybody, you're sending them the finished card. So how your tools look, if they're still usable for you, that's all that matters. This is one of the first mats I used. Again, it's still nice and tacky, but you can see I used a black ink all over the side here. The black ink didn't come off the surface. I'm not surprised by that. I just took a little bit of water and wiped off any of the excess, and anything that didn't come off, I just left because it's a tool and it still is sticky in those areas. Alright, and during my little pep talk there, this actually dried, and so once the water kind of evaporates off the surface, you're gonna get all of that amazing stick back on your mat and you're ready to use it again over and over. Alright, again, I'm bringing in another piece of stark white cardstock and placing it right into the center there. And now let's talk about lining things up using the grid lines. This is another one of my favorite ways to use the mat, and I love it because the paper is attached here. So these grid lines are really accurate because they're not moving throughout my process. For this, I'm going to use the Simon Hurley Create Pinstripe background stamp. I absolutely love this one. It is a peel apart background, and all of these stripes can kind of peel out of here, so you have lots of different options. But I'm going to use one of the stripes separately to create some colorful patterns on today's card. All right, starting off with some slippery when wet, I'm going to ink up my stripe. And then we can go in and stamp it down. And when it comes to stamping this, if you want to do it on a diagonal, you totally can. You can also do it on a straight line and follow those grid lines to make sure that you're lining it up in the right place. I love to show the diagonal though because it's super versatile. So I'll line it up with the diagonal lines there and stamp it down. And all I'm doing, lining it up with that point, and then giving it some good pressure. And the cool part that I've shown before is if I want to go in again and complete the pattern, all I need to do is do the exact same thing on the other side. So just line it up with those two grid lines, stamp it down, give some good pressure, and now we've created a perfect X across my card, and we're going to create a really beautiful interlocking plaid pattern. Again, with my inks, just clean them off simply with a little bit of water, and then we can move into the next color. Next, I'm using a little bit of Roar. We'll go in, and we can line this up now with the last stamped. So I'm just going to place it down. I'm lining up the outside of the rubber with that stripe, and I know it's going to be straight because of those grid lines, and line it up with my last stripe. And here we have our pattern that's starting. All right, last one, we're going in with a little bit of Prom Queen. I don't want to go too in depth on every single technique, but I do want to show how beautiful this pattern is once it starts to form. So again, going in here with my stamp, lining it up with the last edge, good pressure. All right, how cool is this? I love that pinstripe stamp for building these sort of patterns, but this makes it super easy that I can line up the grid lines and make sure that we're gonna get an even pattern in the center of our card. Again, for this, going to peel off like that. You have a really easy lift off then, and then all I need to do is clean this off using a little bit of water. And you can literally see it reacts super quickly with my ink, with the water, and then all I need to do is lightly wipe. Again, no rubbing, we're not trying to get rid of the adhesive, we're just trying to lightly clean off the ink. I also love that this fits right inside of the MISTI stamping tool. I'm going to then place down another piece of my stark white cardstock right in the center there. And this is great for when you're stamping larger background images. So here, I'm gonna use the Bold Bouquet stamp set. I love this large image, but because it covers a whole card, it can sometimes be difficult to hold it down using just your magnets and make sure it's not gonna move. So by putting it right inside the MISTI here, I'm going to then pick it up with my MISTI door. And because of that adhesive, it's not moved, and I have peace of mind knowing that it's gonna stay in the exact same spot. All right, I'll go in with a little bit of black ink and ink up my stamp. Just make sure this is down in the corner there, and we can give it some good pressure. Even go with my pressure tool to make sure this is nice and stamped. It's stamped pretty well, but again, one thing I love about this is I know that it's in the exact same spot because of that adhesive. Sometimes magnets aren't as reliable, so I can just go in here, and if I want an even darker image, I'll just stamp it over top one more time. And look at that super crisp jet black image that we've done covering the whole background. All right, now if I want to stamp a rubber background, I'm going to take out that piece of foam, and usually in the past we've had to kind of place it in the corner, and then when you stamp it down, you're missing this aspect and you're not really getting the framing that you want on your card, right? So when this mat comes into play then, you can put it down in there, place your piece of cardstock right in the center again, and then we'll take our background stamp and we can line it up exactly how we want it onto the card. So I'm going to place mine right in the center. I want that large flower kind of in the center there. I'm going to peel this out, and this happens to be a peel apart background stamp, so some of the sections are kind of cut out pieces, and then I'll just line it up and pick it up with the door of my MISTI. Then I'll go in with a little bit of Prom Queen at the top, ink it up. I'll move into a little bit of Crown Me. We're going to create kind of a nice color blend today. And then lastly, we'll move into a little bit of No Diving right at the bottom. Get that vibrant blue in there. All right, and to blend these together, I'm just gonna go in with a blending brush. I love to do this to kind of soften some of those lines. And by using a blending brush, it doesn't really take off any of the ink like a foam tool would. It just kind of helps to blend it together and get rid of any harsh lines on the surface. So then I can go in, I'll use a little tiny bit of water, spray that down for a watercolor look, and we'll go in and stamp it down. Give it some good pressure all the way around. All right, and when we lift that off, check out that beautiful background that we got. And I love that we were able to put it in the center, get the exact framing that we wanted, and knowing this wasn't going to move off the surface at all. To finish off the day crafting with my stick and stamp mat, I'm just going to grab my piece of acetate and cover it right back up. And this is just going to keep any of the dust or debris away and keep it really nice and tacky for the next time we want to use it. One of the other don'ts with the mat is just don't really use any sort of tape on the surface. It's because the adhesive on the tape wants to pull the adhesive off of the mat. I've tried using it on here and it hasn't really reacted too well, so I wouldn't recommend that, but you don't really need much tape because the stencils are going to stick to the adhesive already on the surface here. Alright guys, I hope today's video really helped you. I've gotten lots of questions about that mat and using it in my videos, and I hope this answered lots of your questions. Leave me a comment down below on what your favorite use is for the stick and stamp mat, and I'll have links down below to everything I used in today's video, and those links help support me, so I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for spending time with me today, guys, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!